Alrighty, guys, let's get right into this video. Basically, what you need to know is that the Social Security Administration is going through a bit of a rough time. And some people will say, well, I don't know if that's true, or I believe it's true. And frankly, I don't care at this point because I've realized that most people have absolutely no grounding rod on the reality of what they're facing when it comes to their benefits. But in the current of right now, I am noticing a trend, and the trend is that we've had Elon basically go on Fox News. He gives a walkthrough as essentially some of the problems that he's seeing when it comes to the distribution of benefits and also fake social security numbers. Now, I want to point to you one of the things that came out very recently, which is a tweet from him. I'm going to read it to you right now. In 2020 to 2021, at SBA Gov issued 3,095 loans, including PPP, Paycheck Protection Program loans, and EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster loans, for $333 million to borrowers over 115 years old who were still marked as alive in the Social Security database. In one case, a 157-year-old individual was able to obtain it. So the bottom line is there is news release related to essentially these older individuals receiving loans and money. And here's kind of the thing that I need you to understand that I think is very, very important. In my industry, the way I have to, interact with essentially claimants, there are a significant number of claimants, should be way more than it actually is, who are essentially trafficked. And one of the things you have to realize is that the Social Security Administration is a piece of the puzzle for criminal activity when they go to traffic individuals. Now, trafficked individuals basically either exist, right? They're people who were, taken away from us. They were, ended. And then their social security number lives on going forward to go ahead and do other deeds, like take out loans that shouldn't be taken out or have basically some sort of reattachment to an individual who maybe was not originally that person. So, for example, what happens is you'll have a bad, person go ahead and go into some small town, take out a family that's kind of on the outskirts of the town that people don't really know, and then take those children and put them into the service of whatever criminal enterprise they want. But you can imagine these children then work with those bad people, and those bad people assign them social security numbers that they've collected. Now, I've always wondered how they actually got the social security numbers that they attach to these people, because when I get them, they usually have a social security number that's attached to them. That's a new one that was given to them by the Social Security Administration by and through the three-letter agencies. But way back in the day, they had a different social security number, which was given to them by the criminal mastermind that took over their family. A similar effect of this is what they're starting to find with the DOGE. I do not believe the DOGE will be able to find the younger individuals who are being trafficked because there's no easy red herring. There's no like, oh, they're 155 plus years old. We can look at a database and say, okay, here we go. I don't believe that's what's happening here. What I believe is happening here is basically that they're able to find people that are basically receiving loans and other things that are not alive. Now, why is this relevant? Why is this important? It's important because the largest amount of fraud against the government in general, is probably not that some people over 110 years old are receiving Social Security benefits. Some of them are. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. I mean, there's millions of people with their accounts still open because they don't have a death date on their system. But the real problem is that these fake Social Security numbers are essentially still being used to go ahead and transact taxes, meaning that there will be income associated to the name, and that will allow for basically the individual to have received so-called profit and income and then pay taxes on it. So they're doing games outside of the Social Security Administration, yet the Social Security Administration is supposed to be the steward of the Social Security number. So the problem is even more so worse than the benefits that are being paid out. Yes, it hurts the trust funds. Yes, it hurts the overall effect that we have of believing that the Social Security Administration is running as it's supposed to, because it has a lot of fraud, it has a lot of waste. But at the end of the day, the real ruining factor is that a lot of these fake loans and things like that I see dealers taking out against those who basically are abusing and using their products. Similar game here. They're basically using these impossibly old people to go ahead and defer payments that they would have to make on taxes, or have that person have the earnings attached to them to keep them in a lower tax bracket. Now, as a result of that, what I want to point out, and I think this is really important, how do these people get these ancient social security numbers, right? Did you ever think about that? Because the social security program for retirement benefits is only 89 to 90 years old. So, how do these criminals, unless there was somebody feeding them the information from inside, okay, the Social Security Administration, how do these criminals actually get these social security numbers? You gotta think for a moment. Who inside the SSA is handing them this information? Because nobody's gonna definitively just have it, right? Unless maybe they looked up some giant book of, how old people were and who lived in what state, and then they tried to call the Social Security Administration and magically figure out if they're alive or not alive and whether their social security number has been ended. I don't think that's the gig. I mean, maybe they've got a way, but I think there's somebody or some group of people in the Social Security Administration who, for a long period of time, have used and abused those social security numbers. So you're going to be seeing over the next couple of weeks a lot of arrests of criminal organization people who have been using and abusing social security numbers of people that are over 100 years old that are no longer alive. So that's going to be very, very spicy, very, 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 very scary as to what they actually find. As a result of this, I think it's a tricky, tricky situation where, I think we're evolving into this place where we're starting to see small bits of information because we know now, right? We know now because both sides have researched it. Not all of these individuals that were over 100 years old were getting a check. Most of them weren't, but it is how profit was submitted through their social security number through the IRS that is the main fraud problem. Now, Elon also stated a bunch of things basically talking about social security benefits and entitlements and what's going on, and it's quite scary at this point. Now, I want to also point out, and I think this is very important. If you call the SSA employees receive directives, and the directives require that they don't use certain terms or that they don't say certain things. So I was updated, and I can't go into it because it hasn't been released on the news yet as to what terms they're not really supposed to say or talk about. But back in the day when Biden was in, they were not supposed to use words like backlog. They were not supposed to use words that actually outlined the numbers related to the backlog because it caused a lot of retired and disabled people a lot of anger and frustration with having to wait for their benefits. So, what's interesting about this whole situation is that there are certain phrases and words that employees are not allowed to use. And I'm hoping that over the next couple of days, because, oh, doggies are checking in on somebody. I'm hoping over the next couple of days that we'll have an individual on the show who will be able to shed some light on the specific words and phrases that they're supposed to stay away from. So that will be coming up as well. Now, there was an article written by Chris Majirian, AP. Elon Musk targets Social Security and benefits for cuts, claiming widespread fraud. This was done on March 10th, so basically later in the day yesterday. And let me get to some of the basics here so you know exactly what's going on. Elon Musk debunked theories about Social Security on Monday while describing federal benefit programs as rife with fraud, suggesting they will be a primary target in his crusade to reduce government spending. Now, remember, this is a left leaning article. Okay. Not only have they found fraud in people that were over a certain age, they found some of them receiving benefits still, but they've mostly found problems where people over this 100 years old situation are receiving income that's not actually theirs. And I think I might know how they get these social security numbers through the SSA. And I think it's absolutely horrific. Now, you guys got a taste of a lot of that stuff when you saw Hunter Biden somehow maneuvering through our political system, receiving funding from China, receiving funding from Ukraine, etc. So you got to see how some of these family members have direct, connection to these agencies going forward. I think, and I'm going to actually be researching it over the next couple of days. I may know how they were able to do this as criminal enterprises to collect social security numbers for those that were still left open inside the system. Let's keep reading. The billionaire entrepreneur who is advising President Donald Trump suggested that 500 billion to 700 billion in waste needed to be cut. Most of the federal spending is entitlements, must hold the Fox Business Network. And he said that's the big one to eliminate. Now, remember, entitlements come in all shapes and forms, right? You've got Social Security entitlements, which are kind of like supplemental security income. And then you have a lot of food stamps and things like that. But the main thing of the Republican Party is to make sure that they get people back to work. That's the whole push. They want to get people to work. They want people to earn money and pay taxes so that they can spend that money that people earn so that they can go ahead and have more money for whatever projects they want to do, right? And the Democrats, they want a heck of a lot more money collected, right? So that's why the Democrats, when they gave kind of a bullshit approach, to be fair, during Biden's 4 years. They said, "We love you, we want to help you, we want to help the poor, we want to help the homeless, etc." Me, the guy who actually works with the homeless every single day, uh, you know, I got to tell you, look, there's a lot of great Democrats out there, but the ones at the very top are all part of the same club and they're shit. And the problem with them is that they are all promoted and paid for and pushed by essentially the billionaire class that's on their side of the field. And so this whole, which is why I like Martin O'Malley a lot, because Martin O'Malley can't seem to get any money. Nobody wants to give him money as a politician. And what's interesting about that is that he was one of our past commissioners and he's always constantly broke. Now that may change in the future, but it's one of the things that's kind of interesting about him is that the billionaire class that represents the Democratic Party will not fund him. They won't touch him. They won't give him money. They won't help him. So that's a very interesting point. But again, with the Democratic Party, when it comes to specifically, those who are massively supported by the billionaire class, anywhere from Stacey Abrams to, all those Democrats that have now become super quasi ultimate, millionaires, almost on their way to becoming billionaires. That program, that entire system is completely frauded out at this point, and it's disgusting. And for me, a guy who works with the homeless, it's just we don't see Democrats as they should be. I think a lot of Republicans would find Democrats more appetizing as a group of people if they didn't have such extreme billionaire class directives to have to follow. Now, obviously, on the Republican side too, they have these issues as well. But you'll notice that the Republican Party is moving more center, and the Democratic Party is just running as fast as they can to the far, far, far left. And you will say, "Oh, he's giving his political opinion." That's political truth. It's just it is what it is. It is what it is. So at the end of the day, the sooner we get to the reality of what it is, we'll know exactly what they're doing with Social Security benefits, which is kind of the whole point of figuring out where they're going to go ahead and add or remove to the things that we rely on to be able to survive. But yes, Elon Musk said most of the federal spending is entitlements, and that's a big one to eliminate. And they want to go ahead and get rid of programs that uphold the American people, such as food stamps. Now, a lot of you guys don't hang out with homeless people, so I understand some of you are going to be totally fine with saying food stamps, we shouldn't have them, but we need to have them because there's a lot of people out there that are in the transition phase where they're not on some government program that allows them to go ahead and succeed, and they need some sort of smaller program like food stamps to kind of keep them rolling. Also, food stamps are kind of like that middle ground where if they don't fit into a program, we give them something to be able to survive as an American. As you guys know, American families have largely been destroyed. They've been destroyed, right? The classic thing of, somebody who is basically living with, their family, receiving help from their family. I think what happened, the majority with this situation is that, and keep in mind, I see people in the comments being like, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, 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 blah. Just to clarify who I am to the people in the chat and the comments who see this video, I literally have represented more homeless people than you will ever see in your entire life. Okay. I have worked with more low income people who are struggling than you will ever know in your entire life. I am the most viewed, most subscribed to, most clicked on disability attorney. I'm the person who does the claims that the big box firms won't touch because they don't make enough money. So my point is, when it comes to seeing claims, and I get this a lot. A lot of people are like, well, you should never worry about CDI units and these police that the SSA have with investigating benefits. That is the thought pattern of a person who lives in a bubble. They are delusional because they don't actually research it. They just sit there and say, I hope it's not true. Then on the other side, like me, where every week somebody brings to the table what's going on with their particular situation, who's being investigated, and then I go ahead and work with them as to things they can do to try and protect their benefits. To me, it's weird. When I see the level of delusional mental escape, holiday brainwashing that people have and they keep pushing inside their head, I get very depressed because the truth is very obvious to me because I have to work with it all the time over and over. But then these other people, they're just like living in this bubble, hoping that it'll never happen on their street. And when I tell them and I show them, I'm like, okay, here's an ROI. Here's what they did in the investigation. Here's one of the tricks that they teach them to do to go ahead and follow you. Here's how this works. When I show you guys that, I'm not showing you because I want to scare you. I'm showing you because you have to learn what they're doing to protect your benefits. But again, we're always going to get those comments from those people who are completely mentally removed from reality, which is this field. There's a lot of people with mental, let's call it anxiety, depression, panic attacks, but also low intelligence, intellectual quotient that, these individuals, if they watch news that like the classic legacy news channels, they're going to get a complete mental removal from the reality of what's going on. And that's one of the tough things about it. Some of you guys, you go back to, all right, so remember when I made that video and I said, okay, so talking about, a person who gives birth. And I said, okay, well, we can't just call them a mother, I guess, right now. We have to call them, a this person or that person, whatever. You have to understand, I grew up on a farm. The idea that an individual would not be a female and give birth, that's a hard stretch for me. Some people go through massive surgery, but still, obviously, they can't give traditional birth. So for me, the acknowledgement, the notice that the person is a mother is de facto like that's how it is. That's what it is. That's the idea that somebody would claim that there's something else and they have the capacity, even though they don't have the capacity. We used to actually have a particular category in the disability field as attorneys for those individuals. We used to have specific types of impairments that we would attribute to those types of individuals that would have a disconnect from what their body was. And so to me, when a lot of you say, well, that's ridiculous, says we used to medically get them found disabled for claiming when it was a female claiming they were a male or male claiming they were a female. That was part of their impairment. And so for me, it's a lot tougher to say, okay, well, a mom could be called a birthing parent because we don't want to offend. For me, it's a lot tougher than it is for you guys because I used to have to set up the claim to have the person be found mentally disabled and unable to work because of their mental instability. So like there's this bigger, and a lot of you are going to go, well, you can't say that about, this group of people or that group of people. But again, it is a fact. In the legal community, we would work with these individuals to get them found disabled so that they would get a check because many of them could not work because they would get into fights with people. They would have difficult times interacting with others. They would have a hard time waking up consistently on time. These are all part of the things structurally that we would do to get them found disabled. Now, do a lot of them that, basically claim that they are this or that or part of the LGBTQ community, do a lot of them have amazing jobs and amazing futures and help the community? Absolutely. But I didn't work with that particular group all the time. I worked with the group where I worked to help them get found disabled to have a check. I also work with a lot of individuals who, to be fair, essentially have these issues currently. We still use a lot of the same arguments, and they are part of a lot of political machines where they go out and they basically are hired either over the table or under the table to do political rallies. And what's weird about it is that, the drawn connection between these two, people are ashamed to talk about it. And that's not okay. If you really want to know how we can help disabled people, it's so that we start opening the conversation so that you understand what's going on so that we can talk about it. And if you're willing to learn essentially about what these impairments are, how they work, what are the traditional things, the profiles that are created and what people usually do as a result, I'm telling you, you will learn so much and be able to help so many more people. And that's one of the big problems is that disabled people are largely shunned by the mass population. And disability benefits were created mostly to go ahead and have a system to support individuals, but also keep them separate from the working class so that the working class would be able to go ahead and produce more income to produce more tax payments to then allow the government to spend more money. So as a result of these things, we have a system of massive entitlements, benefits, etc. And to be fair, there is a war against those benefits right now. It is. There's absolutely. But, on the people on the Republican side, they're not wrong. The people on the Republican side, we need a fraud assessment. We need a similar fault assessment. We need a waste assessment. Okay. We've not really had one of these at this level in a really long time. And one of the absolute proofs of this entire situation being completely out of control, one of the absolute definitive things that proves that this was not where it should have been, was that if you go look at the SSA and the group called OIG, which is the Office of Inspector General, and you read their yearly reports, okay, you will see that OIG saw a lot of this type of fraud going on. They saw a lot of it. It was all there, was in a report. It was handed over to Congress. Yet the SSA didn't have the money to fix it. It was by Congress being starved so that it couldn't fix the fraud that existed inside it. Now, Elon comes along and he makes this whole big flowery, like, oh, look what I found. Oh, this is so surprising. A lot of the stuff he's finding was already found by OIG. Okay. It was already found by the Inspector General. The disgusting part of this is that your House, your Senate, your president, okay, literally starved the Social Security Administration so that it could not fix its own problems. Sure, the SSA through OIG does a great job. They're finding Social Security Administration personnel, specialists who are frauding the system, creating people that don't exist, making new Social Security numbers, assigning fake children to people who have passed away. Sure, it does that. They're also finding fraudsters that are receiving retirement checks that are obviously not 62 plus. They're also finding fraudsters that are not disabled, but are getting a disability check. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, there has never been people, a group, the American people, who gave a shit about the future of the Social Security Administration like now. Now, it's scary because they're cutting a lot of jobs. They're cutting a lot of programs. It's very scary. And it's more scary for me than it is for you guys because I have to represent a hell of a lot more people than just one person receiving benefits. You ever think about that? How many people are going to be affected over the next 12 to 24 months, 2 years, essentially with trying to be found disabled, trying to receive a check? Do you ever think about this? How a lot of people sitting backwards in time, you get people who have been found disabled 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Most of these people would not be found disabled today, most of them, because their impairments do not rise to the level that is severe enough. They did back in the day because the program was significantly more liberal. The transition from the golden era of making a lot of money as an attorney, okay, in the Social Security field ended in 2011 and 2012. My firm got started in 2013. I left the other firms basically around the end of the golden period. You want to go study the golden period of Social Security benefits? Go look at Bender and Bender. Go look at the 90s. Go look at basically all the way up through 2010, 2011, 2012. And then look at what happened to them in 2013, 2014. The golden era of getting people disability benefits was cut off. 2017, massive change. Trump's Commissioner Saul, massive rule changes that were pro-agency, anti-claimant. Right? The timeline. Mike X, thank you for the $10 donation. I super appreciate it. We the people love Walter for your dog and stay safe. I super appreciate it because in the not too distant future, he's going to be getting his surgery, which is, of course, a massive one. It's a hip surgery where they actually put a bone directly through his hip and then put a socket in for the top that the ball will then fit into. So massive surgery on a tiny little dog. He's right over here. In the not too distant future, too, you guys will be able to see him with the new setup. Now, with that said, let me get into this real quick. All right, I want to read this to you. The comments on the popular program and other benefits provided to Americans could remember this article is left-leaning, so I'm going to bring it back to the middle. A lot of you guys are Republicans and Democrats. I'm an independent watching the shit show happen from the middle, but let's keep rocking and rolling. The comments on the popular program and other benefits provided to Americans could rattle politicians on both sides of the aisle as Musk works to downsize the federal government, especially as he already faces blowback for his chainsaw-wielding approach to laying off workers and slashing programs. I'm going to be honest with you. Trump and Elon, the largest screw up that they've made when it comes to Social Security Administration is that they allowed people to choose to leave indiscriminately. They didn't go ahead and create a situation, although they did do a massive firing. But of those they allowed to choose to leave, they didn't specifically tailor it enough to get rid of people who were not efficient enough, not achieving enough, not completing enough. So as a result of that, you have a lot of people who really knew what they were doing leaving now with the retirement option because they made it really amazing for Social Security employees to go ahead and retire and withdraw from the SSA and go find some job in the private sector. So as a result of that, you are going to see a big problem at the SSA because what we're going to be left with are a lot of people who do not know, again, do not know how to actually run this program. And let me explain something to you too. There is among the majority, mass majority of the disabled and retired community, an expectation. It's starting to go away, but it's always been there from the very beginning until around now, where people have this belief that when they send in medical records to the SSA, when they send in this and this and this and this and this, people always say, well, you have it. You have the record. Didn't you read it? And they'll say this and they'll have this expectation that the SSA has people there reading every single document that's sent in and that they're fully up to date on everything that happened with their file at every single moment, the moment you send it in. Oh my goodness, it's insanity. Insanity on behalf of the potential recipients and those who are recipients. Do you realize how much time it takes to read through a medical document for somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience doing it? Sure, I can do it quickly. The administrative law judges can do it quickly. Sure, but there's not a lot of us. There's a lot more DDS reps. There's a lot more SSA personnel that when they got to go through it, it's going to take them a while because they're not used to it, especially now because a lot of them are new. Do you realize how much time it takes to do that? Do you realize why we're having such a backlog? It's because actually figuring out if somebody deserves disability benefits takes a lot of brain power. Now, sure, they've got AI just recently that can skim through the entire file, pull things out. But the major thing that I never hear any of these commissioners talking about, any of these lesser commissioners, any of these managers talking about, is the main problem with AI is that medical doctors, when they submit their diagnostic impression reports, their actual medical reports, a lot of it's templatized so that at the end of the day, there are lines that say, no issues with this, no issues with this, no issues with this. And then at the bottom, it'll say in the remarks section or the little write out section, has issue with this. And it will directly conflict with what's in the notes. And that AI program will take that and say, okay, well, the record said this, 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 is this, but it also said this. So now you've got some adjudicator sitting there saying, oh, well, the record clearly said this, but then it also said a little of this. And the problem is it will build up too much of fake, not proper information that was part of a template system that they didn't change in their form, which allows AI to prove that you are not disabled because the information presented shows that the doctor believed you didn't have this issue because he didn't check things off or click things off from his template. A huge issue that we don't have a solution to that AI is going to be using. The SSA will claim, hey, hey, bottom line is this, to be fair. And by the way, Charlton Zimmerman, I saw your comment there. No, I don't have stocks, really. I have a little bit of stock that was left to me. I don't have anything in the 401k. My business, when it comes to Social Security benefits, it doesn't make much money. It doesn't. And the reason why is when you represent SSI people, which are homeless, low income, etc., you could work for them for 3 to 4 years, right? Just getting them to the hearing and all this stuff. And then the SSA will cut off a lot of their back pay as to when they claim that they became disabled. It could be a $3,000 check, $4,000 check for representing somebody for 2.5, 3 years. Insanity. You lose money on those. You lose money on those almost every single time. The entire impoverished community of homeless and low income are not going to be able to find anybody to help them in the future. Okay, sure, a bus hits them and, some PI attorney can sue the county. Sure, in that instance, yeah, maybe. But for other things, there's not going to be any legal help. There's just not, because the county, the state hasn't figured out a way to get attorneys to actually work for it at a high enough level to fix the problems of these individuals. That's one of the big problems. Next thing, Mark Vietti, thank you for the $20 donation. Thank you. Yeah, the doggies they're always here with me too. They're always like right here with me. Wow, super thank you for the 2 donations with the $20 and the $20. But Sweetie's doing well. She had 2 major surgeries for the TPLOs last year and a cancer surgery, which you guys probably saw the video. And then, of course, Shadow has to go in for hip replacement surgery. So it's been a very expensive. Like if you're wondering, like, oh, what do you spend your money on? My dogs. That's basically what I spend the money on. That's whatever money I get. That's they go to the dogs. That's pretty much the whole yada yada. But that's my kids because as you'll see with some of the video stuff we're about to watch, bottom line is having kids nowadays is incredibly expensive. Dogs are cheaper. That's why you see mega billionaire companies, mega billionaire families buying up all of the different veterinarian practices and all the different vet foods and pet foods and things like that because they know the future marketplace of children are going to be pets. Now, do pets pay Social Security FICA taxes? No. Is that the number one thing that's going to collapse Social Security benefits? Absolutely. Because if there's not enough new kids being born, there's not enough new workers. Let's keep rocking through this thing. Musk's estimate for the level of fraud and entitlements far outpaces figures from watchdogs like Social Security Inspector General, who previously said that there was 71.8 billion in improper payments from fiscal year 2015 through 2022. That's less than 1% of benefits paid out during that time period. Musk also said there were, quote, 20 million people who are definitely dead, marked as alive in the Social Security database. However, the leader of the agency has rejected claims about widespread payments to dead people. He hasn't actually, and this is part of the problem with a lot of this legacy news stuff. They're not always, they don't read it with an attorney's eye. If you go back to what Commissioner Dudek said, he basically left it open. He didn't say that they all weren't receiving checks. Okay, the wording he used could, basically said that some were, they're fixing it, they're working on it, but it wasn't widespread, massive. Okay. So, but remember with a lot of this legacy news stuff where they write these articles, the problem is you get individuals who are not attorneys that read through the thing and they go, okay, well, this kind of means this, so I'm going to write this. Well, it doesn't. They write in their official commissioner, Social Security news and press releases, very specific words. If you ever want to look to essentially who writes, things that they know might be used in court down the line, so they use very specific wording, just look to any of the commissioners, presidents, vice presidents. Anything coming out of an executive is extremely polished and extremely well written. All right. Next one. Quote, these individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits, said Lee Dudek, Social Security's acting commissioner. There's the quote. Now, let me ask you this. You put your lawyer hat on. If you hear these individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits, is that statement the same as these individuals are not receiving benefits? These individuals are absolutely not receiving benefits. No, those are all different statements. The statement he said was these individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits, which means that some of them are, it's just not widespread. That's the reality. It is not the de facto, the leader of the agency has rejected claims about widespread payments to dead people. He hasn't rejected it. He's saying that some of them are, but it's not widespread. But again, legacy news places, you get journalists going ahead and going, well, here's the massive conclusion. That's not the massive conclusion. All right. The interview with Fox Business was a reminder of Musk's deep skepticism and even hostility towards the program, which provides monthly benefits to retirees and some children. Trump has promised to defend Social Security from cuts, but Musk has described it as the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, and the administration is shutting down some of the agency's offices. Let me be clear about whether or not the Social Security Administration is a Ponzi scheme. The Social Security Administration is the definition of a Ponzi scheme. It is where people who are receiving some sort of benefit are being paid for by future investors in that program. All you have to do is change government Social Security program with basically, private corporate interest. And you have, what people's brains would see as a classic Ponzi scheme. Now, is the Social Security Administration a bad Ponzi scheme? Well, right now it's not running so well, and it is going to run low because the trust funds are running out in the next 8 or 9 years with a 15 to 25% reduction in benefits. There's a big swing there, but it's more in the 20 to 25% reduction. And of course, that's sped up by the Social Security Fairness Act being paid out. But, I've always looked at it as the more money this system can pay out to actual citizens, the better it is. But the bottom line is this with this whole thing. Yeah, obviously, the SSA, even though it's been running for 89 to 90 years, is a Ponzi scheme. Does that mean that we shouldn't love it? No, we love it because it supports our elderly class from being destitute. Now, is it true that if the benefits were privatized and they were highly protected and they were very careful with what they were doing with them, etc., that at the end of the day, right, that people would do a lot better? Of course. Of course. You'd have millions of dollars, with the average person from what they pay in over their life, from, different investments into stocks, bonds, etc. Right? It would be a very different thing. You'd have a lot more wealthy elderly people. But the risk with that is higher. Now, remember, there are different levels to privatizing Social Security that they don't talk to you about in the news. There's what we have now, which is our government, which is basically the shittiest investor on planet effing Earth. The shittiest investor on Earth. A whole chunk of what you pay in goes into special interest bonds, that your ROI is absolutely horrific. So if you're ever sitting there wondering, like, well, what did the American people do to deserve their benefits running out? It's called putting in place government officials who have basically destroyed our faith in our Social Security program because the return on investment is total shit, because they just wanted to take the money and spend it on government programs, create an IOU through a 15-year special interest bond, and then pay it back in interest and the original amount by printing money. So if you're sitting back wondering, oh, how did this happen? What's actually going on? That's what happened. What happened is we put politicians who are failed business people in charge of our money. And guess what they did? They failed the business. Look, did any of you guys ever think for a moment that if you had one of these, like, kind of like, middle ground, not even the best, but middle ground, super trust, financial people running the Social Security program, if they had that many trillions to play with, right? Imagine they would be able to manipulate every single financial market across every single continent. They would be able to make money no matter what, because the more money you have, the more you can manipulate stocks and bonds and the outcome of an industry, because you have enough to swing what happens with it. We should have been the richest people on earth. Instead, we can't afford children, which are required to, through the Ponzi scheme, pay for the elderly in the future. Right? That's the problem. That's the problem we're facing with this. Okay. So, quote, he said, okay, so we'll keep reading through. All right. Musk said Monday that federal entitlements are a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here and then turning them into voters. The allegation echoed the Great Replacement theory, which claims that politicians are trying to expand their power by reshaping the country's racial demographics. They are. That is true. We pay for a chunk of immigrants on what's called supplemental security income. When you hear a politician tell you that no Social Security benefits, right? They'll tell you no Social Security benefits, right, come from general taxes or cost the American people anything. They are lying. Just look up supplemental security income, Title 16 program under the Social Security Administration that takes from general taxes and pays to impoverished disabled people, impoverished people over 65, and entrants in the form of refugees, asylum seekers, and those who were trafficked. Just go look it up. They're bullshitting you straight to your face. Absolutely. There is an entire program passed by Nixon in the 70s that was created with the purpose of paying people who haven't paid in shit to our program. That comes directly from our taxes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So when, like, the left side tells you this beautiful story about, how there's no immigrants costing the American people anything, like, wake up. You know what I mean? Wake up. Like, wake up. You know what I mean? Just take a moment. The interview was conducted in the White House complex by Larry Kudlow, who served as an economic advisor to Trump during his first term. During conversation, Musk seemed to acknowledge the unusual nature of his role in the administration. Quote, "Frankly, I can't believe I'm here doing this," Musk said. "It's kind of bizarre." It is bizarre. It's bizarre that a random guy who happens to be super wealthy with some of the biggest corporations, while literally having an entire, and this is the amazing thing. Can people, and I ask you this, can people stop saying that Musk has average intelligence? He is running some of the largest corporations on planet Earth, one of which is literally the study of rockets going into space. Can we just take for a moment and realize how incredibly mentally removed you would have to be? The insolence, the absolute ego you would have to believe that Elon is not mentally capable of doing above average things. Like, at what point would you believe that your intelligence is greater than his? Like, at what point? He used to program programs. Could you program a program? Most of you can't. Can you create a rocket and then improve the rocket system on a rocket going to space? Some of you can. Most of you can't. And I don't say this to like say, oh, you should feel bad. I'm just saying reality is that he is something unique. He is one of the greatest inventors of our time. Yes, there were other people working with him. That is how effing inventions work. It's like when people tell me about like business people having failed companies and how dare they think that they can lead a business. Are you shitting me? Do you not even know how employers work? The way employers work is that they start 10 companies. 3 of them might be a success, one of them a big success. But the rest of them, they don't work out. So you get rid of them and you keep trying, you keep trying, you keep trying. It is those innovators who create the jobs that feed the effing people. Like, where's the disconnect there? I'm not totally understanding how we can have such political manipulation of the human brain in this country where people have lost connection with literally where jobs come from. It's not a job stork. There is no magical place that grows them on a tree. There's no job tree. I've looked for money trees myself. They're just not there. I would love to see them. I would love to grow them. Give me some of their seeds. I will find a spot to put them. They're just not there. All right. Okay. So with that said, Trump has publicly backed. Okay. So Musk is the world's richest. Musk is the world's richest person and still runs his private enterprises as he advises the president on ways to overhaul the federal government. He also thanked Trump for his confidence, saying, "Without the president's support, we couldn't make any progress here." Trump has publicly backed Musk and given him extraordinary influence over the federal government. However, the Republican president has indicated a shift in approach, saying that Musk's team would use a scalpel rather than a hatchet. Yeah, because the way that they handled the SSA was way too aggressive. Even they caught Commissioner Dudek saying, "Hey, look, I'm getting these directions from Trump and Elon, these directives saying you got to do this." And he's like, "Whoa, we're cutting," and you can see in his statements, he was worried, very worried about benefits. Musk has not often spoken publicly since joining the administration, preferring instead to present a stream of consciousness on X, his social media platform. On Monday, he accused Democrats of attacking Tesla dealerships. And I saw them literally the other day. I saw them outside the Tesla dealership when I was driving. I saw them. They're out there. Okay. If you don't think there's big money paying for those people to be out there, the new version of like the Antifa against Tesla thing, that's billionaire class paying people to go stand out there. Okay. That's not just random people. That is set up on specific days, specific people paid to be present. Billionaires creating jobs, which isn't a bad thing. You want them to create jobs. Otherwise, they're billionaires without purpose. Remember, I don't think a lot of people realize that if you can make billionaires change the direction of how they're doing things by manipulating their greed, then you can have them help society a lot more. But people don't talk about that because greed is inherently evil and greed has no place in American society. No. Greed is always going to be there. If we can figure out a way to get the billionaires to be manipulated so that their greed actually promotes and creates more for the people, we'll be in a much better place. But we don't do that in America. We just complain about them. That's what we do. All right, so let's see what else is here. Musk sit down with Kudlov was his 3rd interview since joining Trump's administration. He hasn't strayed from his ideological safe space. He previously did a joint interview with the president, Sean Hannity, on Fox News, and he sat down with Joe Rogan, a podcaster who endorsed Trump last year. Republicans have spent decades trying to reduce the size and scope of the federal government, and many have cheered Musk's work. Quote, "The American people are sick of the swamp. They're sick of waste, fraud, and abuse," said Rep. Richard Hudson of North Carolina, who leads the National Republican Congressional Committee. Quote, "For the first time ever, we finally have the tools to affect it, so I think the voters are going to reward us." End quote. But there are signs of backlash and skepticism. Some Republicans have even boasted of blocking budget cuts. Oklahoma Rep Tom Cole issued a statement saying 3 federal offices in his state, the National Weather Center in Norman, the Social Security Administration in Lawton, and the Indian Health Services office in Oklahoma City, would stay open. Quote, I'm thrilled to announce that common sense has prevailed. He said Cole added that, quote, all 3 of these places provide vital and valuable services to Oklahomans, and I'm so proud to have advocated for them. So, look, all this comes down to is that Trump and Elon were far too aggressive at making cuts far too quickly. The way they should have done it is they should have gotten the newer technologies in place inside the government and then use those technologies to get rid of those individuals that weren't producing at a certain level that they should be. Okay? When you have private organizations, mega corporations, to be fair, they don't go ahead and massively fire everybody that they can and then go ahead and bring in, the consultation on the technology that's going to actually change how their operating systems work. They did it wrong. And they did it wrong because they wanted to get in and get a giant piece of the government already out, claim that they're saving a lot of money, although those savings you won't really see until 2 years down the line because a lot of this stuff is already spent or will be spent or has to be spent by court, requirements. So as a result of that, what you end up with is, to be very fair, you end up with a problem where now these agencies are going to be very hindered in their ability to actually process the workload that they have. Chief among which that we are worried about are Social Security benefits. Now, I want to show you something over here real quick.
So, and then with respect to the Treasury, for example, the 2 main recommendations we suggested, which have not been implemented, was that any payments going out of the Treasury, especially the Treasury's main payment computer, which is called PAM, things like a payments account manager or something like that, but it's like almost $5 trillion a year, so about $1 billion an hour, that the payments be coded with the congressional appropriation and that there be an explanation for the payment. Very basic stuff. And just doing that, we estimate we'll save $100 billion a year.
So I guess I've blocked the screen.
Let me see if I get this right.
Wow.
Particularly with Social Security, you're not really changing policy.
Okay, well, here we go. This is good.
Yes.
You're auditing the fiscal mechanisms to make sure that, from point A gets to point B, and that's where it's supposed to get to. In some cases, it doesn't get there, or some cases it may go over there. But that's it's not a policy exercise. You're not changing laws. You're just doing what any business would do in a profit and loss audit.
I think we're really what we're adding here is caring and competence, and there's a massive amount of fraud of basically people submitting Social Security numbers for Social Security benefits, unemployment, small business administration loans, and medical, where those are fake Social Security numbers. So they've stolen somebody else's Social Security number, and we're trying to put a stop to all of that. And that's the number which is estimated to be on the order of 10% of federal expenditures, which is half a trillion dollars.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
You're working with the agency heads. You're working with the cabinet secretaries.
Yes.
I saw Howard Lutnick was on TV yesterday saying you were partnering with them. Is that fair?
Yeah, what we do is in consultation with the cabinet secretaries and with their departments. So we're really trying to be we'll refer to ourselves as tech support.
Mm-hmm.
We're really helping the department get a handle on things because.
Okay. So here's the gig. And you got to understand, like, from my perspective as a business owner, and I was just looking at the comments, and some of the comments were kind of like, holy crap. So just to go back to some of the comments, okay, Puerto Rican Mike, Elon's rockets keeps blowing up, really, Walter? And then there's a comment about essentially, should he run the airports, things like that. Just to clarify some things for Puerto Rican Mike. Take, for example, no technology currently exists that is absolutely definitively safe, although they're pretty close to it, where a rocket can take somebody into space consistently over and over because you have these giant massive explosions on the bottom of the rocket to take it into space. Okay, the closest thing that we have to a safe actual system to get people on top of this exploding upward force inside a can is what Elon has created. The method by which he did that was by over and over and over again testing rocket designs. And as a result, he was the first one to make a rocket that is more sophisticated, more technologically advanced than NASA, Blue Origin, or any other billionaire or the American people can afford. Because remember, NASA is afforded by the American people. So what Elon did was he kept testing over and over all these rocket designs by making fixes. So for people who don't know how industry works or how basically companies work, if you make a product, and then at the end of each run, you modify it to make it better. Now, in the sense of rockets going into space, you're going to have a lot of rockets blow up because every time you make one, you have to make adjustments and fixes to that rocket. The way companies work is every time they have a product, they try to make it cheaper, they try to make it safer, they try to make it basically more able to be shipped, more easily packaged, they try to make it stronger, etc. So every run that they have, they try to make it better. So to make the assessment that Elon is an idiot because he has rockets exploding and that, he shouldn't be in charge of, let's say, the airport is very wrong. And I know that this is an argument being presented by the Democrats right now, and it's moronic. It's not good because when you go to invent rockets, you have to test them, which means that as you make prototypes, you have to go ahead and send them up into the sky. And a lot of them are going to blow up. That doesn't mean that he couldn't build the best plane that there is. He could build the best plane there is and have significantly fewer issues with it because it's not using rocket technology of a massive explosion from multiple engines to shoot something through our atmosphere. So again, you have to understand that for some reason on the left, people are making very poor arguments to attack this guy. They should be going after him for the aggressiveness and removal of people too quickly. Now, with his stuff, he'll walk into, Twitter holding a sink and he'll cut entire server groups, right? He'll cut out entire mainframes. Literally, he's flown to a state to pull the cord and cut the cables and end the payment on that building for entire server systems. And, the thing about it is, to be really fair, right? That's his style of doing things. And that is exactly what you're seeing with the federal government. Now, nobody's ever seen this with the federal government. Nobody's ever seen a hyper-aggressive individual cutting out massive amounts of people. If he is successful, then what will happen is that we will end up with a hyper-efficient government at a much cheaper cost, requiring a lot fewer taxes and being able to put money, hopefully, towards programs that are not pet projects. Again, Victory XR. Elon does not build. He is not an engineer. Elon is every function of a company. He is an accountant. He is somebody who knows how to do rocket science. He is a program engineer. He is a receptionist. He is an administrative function person. He is a TV personality. He is the person who sets up schedules, handles payroll, handles hirings, handles firings. He is all of those things. Again, for those on the left, please think about it. Just think about it. I understand a lot have not had any experience with being an employer or any experience with owning a company or any experience with a company that owns, lots of stuff and has to manage it. I get it. But please just think a little bit about the arguments you're making when it comes to Elon. It's gotten ridiculous at this point. Like, some people are claiming that Elon is below average intelligence, has never built anything in his life, that everything he has is a result of partners that he had that ultimately he bought out or fired or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Elon has partners, just like most companies. Most companies that are billion-dollar companies have more than one person at the top of them. Most companies that are multi-million-dollar companies have more than one person at the top of them that are working together. Sure, one might be the president, One might be the owner, but there's a whole lot of executives making that thing work. If we didn't have it that way, then we wouldn't have companies hiring a lot of people and creating jobs. Will there be a company in the future that is registered as a billion-dollar corporation that only has one person working for it? Absolutely. Technology will create that, especially through artificial intelligence. Do we have that right now? No, we ain't close yet. Probably 5 to 10 years away. Please, just think a little bit before you go into this rant about how he is just unable to do anything. He owns some of the largest companies, has the most money, not because he won the lottery over and over and over again by buying a ticket. It's just weird. It's just weird how people are so removed from it. I'm not sure what the deal is. Like, if you want, look, Democrats have a lot of arguments that they can make against Trump. They got a lot of arguments. They've got a lot of amazing arguments, but the style that they're approaching the attacking is to say that Elon is an idiot. How would you prove that in court? How would you prove that in court that he's an idiot? He's one of the richest guys. He's created industries that literally create products that are the most green thing we've ever seen on this earth. Like, did you guys ever think back and think to why he was such a big fan of the Democratic politicians creating super green cars? All of those politicians had a Tesla. Did you ever think about why he ended up becoming a Republican? It's because he and Biden got into a pissing match over essentially who was going to be the top person when it comes to cars, when it comes to electric cars, you know, having these events, having these fundings, etc. Biden clashed with Elon. That's why Elon went with Trump. That was a Biden thing. If you get a chance, just look it up, research it. And I get that I'm going to get trolls in here just giving me shit about it. Okay, yeah. Okay, so here we go. Odette, you're an Elon apologizer or apologized. He's canceling contracts and awarding contracts to himself. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that he's in the government financially getting some benefit from this. I don't doubt it. That's a good argument to make. Absolutely. Can he be trusted as a neutral party? That's a good argument. The argument that he's an idiot, that's not a good argument. You're never going to get anywhere with that. Okay. All right. So with that said, we've now gone through essentially where Elon sits with a lot of this stuff. He does view, in my opinion, too aggressively that benefits shouldn't be paid out in the way that they are even close. And so as a result of that, I just want you to understand, I just want you guys to be in line with the reality of what's going on with the federal government. Because the question you should be asking yourself is, okay, in the future, right? In the future, are they going to take away more jobs from the Social Security Administration? Because the SSA can't really afford it. They couldn't afford it before. Are they going to take away more jobs? Are they going to close down more products, more benefit, options, right? Services that work towards fixing a benefit problem? Are you just not going to be able to get people on the phone unless you're waiting for 2 to 4 hours, right? Where do we start to rebuild the program? We know that Trump intends to give a 20% boost to Social Security Administration as a, money that they can use going forward in the 2025 to 2026 cycle. We know that he's planned a lot of extra money for the SSA. So what I believe is happening is they're going to cut a bunch of stuff and then they're going to go back in and rebuild it. How they rebuild it, nobody really knows at this point. The Democrats are screaming that they're trying to privatize it. Maybe, not a bad argument. Not a bad argument. But remember, there's levels to privatizing. At the very bottom, you have what the government is doing, right? Not privatized at all. What we have here does not work. It's shit. Then there's giving people a legal right to their benefits, a privatized right to their benefits so that you have to be paid at the rate you were promised. Right now, we don't have that. We have 1937 ruling that says you can't have what you paid for because they're allowed to change it whenever they want. And then you have another level up. That's where you create a sovereign trust where the government can have employees that invest the money like a private trust fund would, except it all stays within the government. Most countries have these. That is where the country has an investment system in privatized entities by owning privatized companies that make the government money. Because having a government that makes most of its money off of basically the work product that gets taxed is a shit design. And then at the top of that, right? So you've got what the SSA is right now. Total shit. Doesn't work. It's not working, right? Special interest bonds. Give it's a scam. It's a scam that the government is doing to the American people. Then you get to the next level, right? Privatizing the right of the person having the ability to get what they were promised to be paid. That way, if they have to change the program and you get less, they have to change the cost of living adjustment math. They have to change how much they're going to give you each month. They have to change the retirement age. If they do that, you can sue them if you have a private right to those benefits. Then you have basically sovereign trusts. The government creates basically inside it the ability to invest and make money off of those investments. And then you have up here where they fully privatize it and the government isn't part of Social Security benefits at all. Maybe they're trying to take it from there all the way to there. I'm saying take it from here to right before there down to the sovereign trust. I'm saying there are versions of privatizing the benefits that do work where it's still in the government because we want to hold the government liable to the American people who spent their entire life paying for the benefits. All right. We have some additional videos that are coming up that we're going to do very quickly because I have to get on phones. I have a private session coming up. All right. James Moody, thank you for the $20 donation. I super appreciate that. He said, I appreciate your honesty and bravery in confronting some of these individuals who are not willing to consider the broader implications of their political views. Look, you got to understand, I've seen enough to know that there's problems in the Republican and the Democratic Party. Okay. And a super thank you for the $20 donation. I do really appreciate those because they help me kind of fund the future of what the channel will be. Because remember, this stuff is super expensive. These cameras are like $300-$400 a piece. You have to have 3 of them to be able to interview people with 2 people and 1 person as the main. So, there's a lot to it. Not now. Thank you for the $4.99 donation. I super appreciate it. That's awesome. Very, very cool. And, I love the little pair that dances with the little weights. Love that. So you got to keep in mind, I've seen enough to see the Republican Party and the Democratic Party be manipulated by mass money, mass interests. And remember, the biggest money that manipulates these groups are other countries and continents that have opportunities that politicians want to tap into, whether they want to tap into it because they just like the idea or it makes them a lot of money. Okay. We should never have a president leaving the office that has to give blanket, get out of jail cards to their family members, to these people, to those people, to da-da-da-da-da. I mean, we've gotten to that point. We've gotten to the point of abuse of our system so that they are having to wholesale out, get out of jail free cards for criminal activities that were committed over multiple year periods. At some point, the American people are going to wake up. At some point, I get frustrated. I get very angry about it because I've been working with Social Security benefits for a very long time. My company that I've owned, the law firm on its own, 11 to 12 years, right? And you got to understand something. Here's what pisses me off the most. The Republicans are always going to be a stick in the mud because they're always going to have to hold the reins back on what we can afford. That's their job. Their job is to be a stick in the mud. Their job is to hold back the reins on spending. The Democrats are supposed to be our innovators. They're supposed to be our creators. Here's an idea. It sucks. Get rid of it. Here's an idea. That one's not bad. Let's go with that. We don't get great ideas from the Democrats anymore. We don't. We used to get great ideas from the Democrats. Now we're getting these let's just create a magical coin and attribute $2 trillion to it and do this. Let's just go ahead and, keep paying everything because, it's going to collapse, but it won't collapse for the next 8 to 9 years. What happened? Did the billionaires get that much of a stronghold on the cojones of these individuals that the left can't create great ideas? Is there no system where we can get great ideas out of these people without the billionaire class squashing them? What happened? We have to have Democrats, just like we have Republicans. We have to have both sides of the team. The one group we don't have to have at the end of the day, ironically, is the group that I'm part of, which are independents, because the independents sit there and watch what's going on and go, holy shit. This thing is not going to make it off the runway. All right. With that said, I will catch you guys a little bit later. I do appreciate if you could hit that like button. I know some of you like the videos, some of you hate me, and some of you say, well, I disagree with them, blah, 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 blah. I haven't been wrong. The only thing I've been wrong about is when they were going to do the Social Security Fairness Act release of benefits. And I was wrong when the Democratic Party was in, because then they said it was going to take a year. And then I became magically right once the Republicans got in. And they said, okay, yeah, we're going to go ahead and start paying these. We've already paid 1 million of them of the 3.2 million that we have to pay. So I guess I was wrong at first, and then they made me right. But the point is, please consider doing a like. Please consider going ahead and subscribing, becoming a member if you like. Super appreciate it, Leanne. Howdy, howdy. Very cool. Jeffrey Taylor, howdy, howdy. Good to see you. With that said, okay, also, if you could, head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida, throw some stars up. I always appreciate that. It gets me excited in the morning. With that said, also, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays to answer questions for free for disabled people. I know some of you aren't disabled. That's fine, but I do it for the disabled because they need help. They're part of the fragile class. A lot of them are more fragile than the elderly class. So bottom line is we got to help the disabled. Now, with that said, I also do private sessions where if you have an issue with the SSA, you can also hire me for a private hour. I don't represent you, but I tell you what to do in that private hour. I was supposed to go live last night. I'm sorry for not going live. I fell asleep. I get super tired sometimes. I work on this stuff day and night. The truth is the law firm sucks up so much time and energy and emotion that by the time I get to other stuff, sometimes I'm just spent. And so that's what happened last night. I fell asleep. So I will catch you all at the next video. Give me about, I'd say 5 minutes. The next video, we're going to be doing a very short version of it. And then we're going to go ahead and basically get right. And the next video, just so you know, is about a Supreme Court case where they may give Trump the ability to fire judges, which I'm a little worried about that one. So, all right, I will see you at the next video. Attorney Walter Hnot, I will catch you there and have a wonderful, wonderful day. See you in about 5 to 7 minutes. And I'll see you there. I'll put the link in the chat area and we'll hop over to the next video. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.